Guess who's back? Back
Again.
You look a bit like Slim Shady.
I am. Will the real Slim Shady please stand up?
Yes, it's good. Or Fisherman's Friend.
Well,
I don't know what you look like. But I quite like the hat.
I
Adds a
like
bit
it.
of colour to your countenance.
Yeah, I like it. I'd
I'd like to know, if you're watching at home, out of 10, Beanie, good for Richard, bad for Richard? What do you reckon? I quite like it. Where'd you go? So you've just been to Scotland, haven't you?
Just been to Scotland. Had a great time there.
Brilliant.
Really enjoyed it.
Can you speak Scottish?
No.
Go on, try.
I can't, dude.
You can do it.
I can't do it.
I can't
do it, Captain.
I just ain't got the fire. Ain't got the fire, Captain.
So I'm impressed. Fire Mountain happened while I was gone. Well done.
Just about.
You got it all working. You put it out. Really good.
Messed up all the computer for you.
Yeah,
on your return.
Look, there's a lot that has to get changed now that we're back. But here we are.
Yeah, it did get done. I mean, me and Adam were scratching our heads up until the point of broadcast. We were just like, let's just do it.
It's good.
See what happens.
It's great.
Only learn one way.
And I was bummed because so much happened in a week of Fire Mountain not being there.
Yeah.
Chancellor, like, honestly, I was all like, Rishi's in, Truss was out. I was like, what is going on right now?
So how did you process that information of Liz Truss stepping out?
Oh, dude, I was all...
See, I wasn't. I was gutted.
What?
Yeah.
Why?
'Cause
Why?
I think the media decide who they want in power, basically. It's true. It's undeniable, man.
Come on.
If the media backs you, you have a relatively easy ride. If they don't back you, then you have hell to pay. Like, literally.
There couldn't have been a thing that Truss had done that made you go, actually, if it wasn't for the media's narrative, she should stay.
Hey, she was 6 weeks. 6 weeks in post. And the media were just like, no. I think that the media wanted a globalist in charge, so they got Sunak in. That's basically why. So I'm pretty disappointed about the whole thing. I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that Truss was smashing goals out of the park. Not trying to say that, but I just think she was a true conservative, and that doesn't serve the media's agenda, basically.
So do you want to go for a general election? Is that where you're at? Do you think the
to
country should go for a general election?
I kind of expressed this a little bit last week. I'm just like, it matters not really. It's the same old, isn't it? Just a different colour.
Okay.
I just think they're just self-serving, man, and it drives me nuts. But I do think that I just wish the media would fly a kite. Honestly, they stress me out so much. It's just like looking at. I think it's more obvious to see in the American side of things.
Yeah.
Because nothing of Biden's gaffes never really get relayed to the public.
Yeah.
But Trump puts his foot out, and it's just like they don't want Trump in, so they witch hunt Trump. Now, I'm not saying again that Trump was a legend, okay? Granted, there was a lot of shortcomings and a lot of blind spots to his leadership and to his personality. Okay, so I'm not condoning a Trump presidency, but I just think be consistent. If you're going to troll Trump and everything he says, then Biden is giving you plenty of material, but Biden suits their agenda. So it just, I don't know, for me, I've got political fatigue. I'm just like, honestly, right now, you may as well put the Green Party in leadership because it's all nonsense, isn't it? It's all rubbish. Says a man of faith.
Yeah, there we go.
So,
uplifting. Woo woo.
Jesus for president is what I'm saying. Jesus for president. So, like, when I heard about the Truss thing, I felt sad for her, but ultimately, I'm not surprised because, yeah, she did do some questionable things and a few too many U-turns and changes. But I've just read now, Rishi Sunak.
Yeah.
He's done a big screeching U-turn apparently. Yeah. On attending the
COP27.
Yeah, COP27. What does COP stand for? Is it Copenhagen?
I don't know. I really don't know, but I know it's got to do with climate change.
I'm going to find out what COP stands for.
Oh. So, Fire Mountain, episode 44, I think. What, you did 43 last week?
I think so.
Yeah, 44. So it's good to have you join us. Welcome down. Once again, enthralling content of Dom just scrolling his phone, trying to work out what
you know what it stands
for.
Can you turn my headphones down a little bit? Do you know what it stands for?
Oh, I don't know which ones are yours.
COP. COP27.
Is that better?
Put it in the chat. Yeah, that's better for me, thanks. Do you know what COP stands for?
What?
What do you reckon? Conference of...
People.
Nope. Think political.
Planet.
Think political. Conference of...
Policy.
Nope. Parties.
Ah.
Parties. And do you know where they're meeting at the next COP? On the 27th of November?
I don't know.
Oh, no, not the 27th of November. When is it? In November at some point.
Brussels?
Egypt.
Wow. Oh, yeah, I didn't know that, actually.
And Egypt, as we know, Egypt is a pharaoh way to go.
I think Egypt is... Egypt's known for its climate change.
It's a pharaoh way to go.
Egypt's known for its climate change.
It's a fair old way to go.
Egypt's known for its climate change. If I don't acknowledge it, it'll just go away.
I wonder if they'll drive in a Cairo.
So welcome to Fire Mountain, episode 44. It's great to have you join us.
Almost at 50. Almost at 50.
I know,
That's
it's
our target.
crazy. It's crazy. It's exciting. So, hold on. I'm just going to squelch the music.
Squelch, yeah. Okay, so now, boom.
Now it's serious times.
No, it's serious. It's time to get real.
So last week, Sunday, you chatted about culture. Yeah?
Talked about culture, measure, yeah.
Yeah.
In specific relation to Halloween and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And whether or not people should be celebrating Halloween.
Yes.
And kind of going out.
Yeah.
And kind of in that,
as
you're busy discussing culture.
Yeah.
What do you think? So I've been thinking about this while I've been away, so I thought I'd jump in here really and just throw it at you.
Let's hear it.
Do you think there is anything as Christians that we should leave alone? What I mean by that, so I was busy, before I went away, the evening before I went away, I watched this documentary which was around Malcolm X, really, and kind of his life, and then his entanglement with Islam, and then he gets booted out of Islam. I'm not saying it's an accurate documentary because I know nothing about Malcolm X's life. So, and then how Martin Luther King plays into that, and how and then he gets assassinated, and how in that moment, all of these kind of voices are talking in about what's wrong, and then on the side you've also got kind of the Christian voice, which seemed to be talking in a very different way to what was happening kind of on what we would now look and go is the right side of the issue, like the correct side. And it kind of made me begin to think, are there issues that it's better for the church to leave alone than to go after?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just to go, because it feels like you're going to lose either way.
I had this conversation just, when was it? 2 nights ago with my mother-in-law. Right, always a great conversation to have.
Can only be right then.
It was a great conversation. She's brilliant, and we were talking about. She's saying, "Does Fire Mountain help with the gospel agenda in terms of?" And it wasn't a loaded question.
Yeah.
She was just intrigued to help to see if I had any intentional thought around what part does this play in Sunny Hill's ambition to kind of see people come to know Christ and stuff like that. And it's a good question.
Thanks, Chris.
What are your thoughts on that? No. so I, for me, I think it's hard, isn't it? Because if we're talking about advancing the gospel agenda as though that's the only thing we're on earth to do, then maybe it's not that helpful because it has the potential to create offence or to burn bridges with certain people. Just might have the potential.
We've never experienced that at all.
For example, if you are a keen moon landing advocate, then this is probably not your broadcast of choice.
100% is your broadcast. Because if you're on the other side, which is the side we're going to call the crazy side.
Yeah. Well, can I just say, she agrees with me mostly more than you, she reckons. I'm like, come on.
She has to say that because she has to see you. But in her heart, her mouth may say one thing, but her eyes say something very different.
So I guess for me, my reflection on it is, and I think it's a great question, I think that the church plays many functions in a society, in a thriving society. Even in our historic kind of forming as a nation, this idea of church and state weren't separated. That actually the king would seek counsel from the church on issues to do with morality and all of those sorts of things. And I think actually when the church loses its voice into areas that speak to morality and speak to culture and those sorts of things, I think what you do is you are ensuring that you are going to a place that no longer has any sort of higher transcendent truth or authority, which I think is a dangerous place for any nation to be in. And I think typically when you remove God out of the equation of any society, you're on the highway to some sort of division and also destruction. But ultimately, it sounds very heavy, but
no. But do you think that because there's no one universal church. So there's no single thrust of thinking that applies to church.
Mhm.
Like it's so varied. So
Yeah.
for every issue there's both sides, and like I feel like no matter which one you choose, you could land on
Yeah.
either side of the issue and find enough Christian support to go, look, I'm not alone. I've got all of these things.
Yeah.
So how, like inside of that, how do you kind of measure that into, and really it was just this thinking around this idea of culture, like how does church speak well into culture?
Yeah.
But actually going, there's no like it's not church. It's this is Dom's view speaking. You know what I mean? It's Richard's view speaking into
you're
culture.
right. I think in the there's different ways, isn't there, to influence culture? It's top down or it's bottom up, right? So historically, I think it would be a top down enforced, regimented, almost doesn't look too dissimilar to the government. They just dress a bit differently and have different practices, but the church being a very established, well-funded entity that was guilty of corruption, that was guilty of manipulation, guilty of a whole heap of things. So it doesn't have like an uncheckered past.
Yeah.
I think godly aspect to building culture, and I think speaking into culture is grassroots, bottom up. So it's not about the unified church with one spokesperson who speaks to King Charles or Rishi Sunak. It's actually about you being a Christian and influencing your friends, and morphing, because it's possible to do that too. That's actually really how the church got a hold to begin with.
Yeah,
it wasn't speaking into the halls of power; it was speaking into the needs of society and community, and the local church responding to those things. So I think that the role that Fire Mountain plays or could play potentially, and I'm not saying it's smashing out the park, but what it's doing is it's daring.
I'm saying that. Absolutely smashing it
out
at
the park.
You've never seen. Look at our view counts, and you will know.
Oh, countless. But I think most Christians aren't willing to engage in the conversation because A, they don't feel like they're expert enough, or B, they're worried they're going to offend people.
Yeah.
Which I think both are crocs, to be honest.
Yeah.
I feel like all we're trying to do is have a conversation, and we have opinions, and everybody has an opinion.
Yeah.
Just most people are either not brave enough, depending on how you view it, or too wise to share it. Whereas we're brave and unwise.
Where we are just foolish 100% and we'll say whatever comes into our mind.
I did read a brilliant proverb the other day, actually, and I wondered whether, Lord, are you speaking to me through that? And it was about, what is it? Like a fool is somebody. When you engage in arguments that don't belong to you, it's like trying to wrestle with a wild dog and grabbing him by the ears. I can't remember how it says it exactly. It was in my Bible reading. And it was just like this idea that when you get involved in a quarrel that isn't yours to get involved with, it's like trying to grab a stray dog by the ears. It's like you're going to get hurt, basically. And it's not good wisdom to do that. And then I was thinking as I was driving, because I was listening to that, I was thinking, are these quarrels that we should be trying to grapple with? And I guess, like, ultimately, I think the scripture in that instance was talking about, like, if you and Phil have a quarrel and I'm trying to wade into that, I think it's that. Yeah. But I think societal things where actually we see somebody in direct contravention with what we believe to be scriptural truth or something, then surely we should be speaking. And I think this is the challenge, and I think it's a good thought about free speech with the whole Twitter thing and this carrying episode, is like if we don't grapple with those things, like, then we have no right to have an opinion on the right. Like, we have to, surely. If we think that society is unrighteous or society is making stupid decisions, if we're not willing to kind of just say that's really dumb. So people confuse this idea that, like, we're not attacking people, we're attacking ideas or ideologies, almost, So if we have a view on the trans debate, hypothetically, we should be able to critique the ideal, or the ideology, or the idea that's wrapped around that, and we should be able to really be brutal with the critique of that. The problem is, in modern society, people don't separate the idea from from the people, from the person.
No.
And I think that's one of the biggest problems, and that's why people are, I think, even with the Twitter thing with Elon Musk, is what they think is now he's coming into power. It's just Twitter's going to become like a hellscape. I think I read in one of the news articles. Yeah. Like this is going to become a hellscape of just chaos and carnage. But the only reason saying that is because they're scared, like that he might bring Trump back or something. Yes. And Trump shares his opinions, and people don't want to hear the opinions because it's almost like they just want to drink the Kool-Aid and just like carry on. But I think like free speech is essential, and in that Christians should be. So no, I don't think anything's off limits. I guess ultimately.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on it? I've spoken a lot.
No. I probably think I'm quite similar to you on this issue. I think so. Like if we took Twitter as a like microcosm of the macro, it seems to me unreal that people who are now raging against the fact that Musk has got Twitter and it could become chaos. Because I go, this is a reflection on culture. Like it's showing culture for what it is. Why, you want your social media to even be fake enough to perceive it to be better than what it is. Like it's a weird measure. But I suppose the flip side of that, which may be a little bit of where your mother-in-law was leaning, is where do Christians draw that line to go? Actually, like when people say, "Oh, well, we offended them for the sake of the gospel," I don't. Like, I understand if I talk to someone about Jesus and they go, I want nothing about Jesus, I want nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
But oftentimes I feel like it's behavior that we've offended people with, and then we go, it's for the sake of the gospel, as if that's justified. And I don't know at times if that is justified. And then I suppose looking at a shifting society all the time, which is moving further and further away from any sensible center, no matter which side of the political spectrum or ideological spectrum you sit, it's just going down like ridiculously crazy routes. Like, at what point do we have to go? Even talking into it's it's just such a waste of time. All we're doing is creating mass amounts of offense, not for the sake of the gospel. We're just offending you now, kind of because you're dumb.
Yeah.
But
well, this is the thing. Is like if I said now I've got this idea, right? My idea is we'll go and get 10 of us, and we'll go up to Hengersbury Head, which is like a cliff nearby. And we're all just going to jump off it, right? Now, and the reason we're doing that is because I just feel like that would be a great thing to do. And I feel like I was born to be a cliff jumper. Like, you would hope that someone would say, that's a dumb idea. And this is why it's a dumb idea. It's going to lead to that.
There may be some of us are saying, jump.
Yeah. Well, if you do that, Dom, it's going to lead to, it's going to be likely death, but possible just severe injury.
Yeah.
Right, but me saying, why would you say that?
Yeah.
Why are you judging me? Like, now people can see that, Frank, for what it is, but then all these other facets of society that are questionable and I think are odds with the God's best or God's design, if you like, that there is evidence and data that support this doesn't end well.
Yeah.
Taking God out the equation just from a societal construct, this does not end well if you go down this route. You're likely to be more depressed. You're likely to be more suicidal. You're likely to change your mind when it's too late. All of these things. But yet, if you present any opposition or hurdle to the ideal, you're then kind of, I don't know, you're some sort of judgmental, narrow-minded, bigoted. And I think this is the challenge, is we think that the church's best approach to such matters, sometimes, I say we don't actually, but many churches think that if we can be like them, then they will like us. Yeah. If we can be less different, less awkward, and more friendly and warm, then that will be sufficient in order to win them over.
Yeah.
I hear this quote all the time, and I hate it. I heard it the other day on some podcast I was listening to. It's the Francis of Assisi. Like, by all means, preach the gospel, and if necessary, use words. It's a load of crock.
Yeah, I agree.
Do you know what I mean? I can sweetly drive all day, and you won't get saved.
Yeah.
At some point, you need to hear.
Yeah.
And the gospel is, obviously, the message of Jesus. But I also think the gospel is bigger than just getting you saved. It's actually about informing the way you live.
Yeah.
It's actually about a repentance and a change of direction to the point of, I was pursuing my flesh, I was pursuing my earthly lust.
Yeah.
God saved me, and the gospel truth has now set me on this trajectory.
Do you think that do you think in what you're saying there's a process? Do you think it's salvation, behavior, or do you think it's behaviors, will bring into reality
Yeah.
the salvation work of
So-
Jesus.
Yeah.
Because I feel like whichever side you pitch yourself begins to affect
Yeah.
the conversation
Well,
you
I
begin
think
to have.
the salvation thing is really hard to determine because
Yeah.
I believe discipleship starts before salvation, but no one can really say that was the point. I was saved. Really, like if you prayed a prayer at the Billy Graham Crusade at Wembley in the 60s or something, right? Is that the point you were saved? Well, maybe, but I don't know. I feel like you can say that prayer and never really have counted the cost and never really allow that prayer to infect or change your demeanor, behavior, ideas, ideals. Like it's the fruit that evidences your salvation. It's not the sinner's prayer. It's not this. It's not this. But the Bible does say, call on the name of the Lord and you will be saved. But it also says, confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead.
Yeah.
So confession obviously isn't enough. Confession, that speaks to your deep-seated beliefs.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately, again, long-winded answers to your questions, that the discipleship journey is one that starts long before somebody's saved and will continue to their die. And the point of salvation, like I wonder, was I saved at that point when I thought I was saved, or was I saved about 6 months later when actually it really radicalized my outlook? Does that answer your question or not?
Yeah, no, it does. I think that it's I think for Christians it's an interesting thing because I think, like, as I've been thinking a little bit about the culture thing and kind of just sparked of watching this documentary, which I was like, oh, that's really interesting. I wonder what I would have done. Because you know when you when you watch a documentary from that time, you think, oh, I was born in the wrong era. I could have been, I could have done something. That's epic what they did. I was thinking that's where I started, like in an arrogant, Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X are okay. I probably could have smashed that out the park even more. But as I was reflecting on it, I was kind of beginning to look and go, so much of immediately where I run to from my Christian faith when looking at the world is behavior.
Yeah.
But actually, it's not gospel. It's making you live right.
Yes.
And if you're offended by what I've said in calling you to live right, then I'm all like, oh, it's for the sake of the gospel. It's not my issue.
Yeah.
Where actually, what I'm not offending you with actually is Jesus. I'm offending you with and it's tricky because I don't want to oversell my thinking on it, but nearly a theological persuasion that I've assumed now that I've entered into a relationship with Christ.
Yes.
And even in that theological persuasion, there can be 10 other people who would go, well, I entered into a relationship with Christ, and I've got a very different theological persuasion to any of those issues you do. What makes your one the right one? And I suppose it comes a little bit down to is, are we trying to get people to live right, to become right with God? Or are we trying to get people to kind of become right with God so they begin to live right with him? Yeah,
it's good. I mean, I think that one of the challenges of this whole thing is, the church, how do I say this? We're not here to judge the world, right? But I do think that there's a part of what we're about that is here to judge the church. Right? So scriptures would be, for example, judgment begins with the house of God. Also, the instruction to church leaders to put people out of fellowship, those who have ungodly lifestyles, that they may come to their senses. That actually, what we should be doing is we should be trying to create a consecrated community of people that live in a distinct and defined way. Our primary responsibility isn't to try to police the world's behavior. So it says that Jesus looked on those with compassion because they were sheep without a shepherd. So his distinct response to them was not one of accusation or correction. It was compassion. However, at the same time, we know that when Jesus engages with one of these people, his word is always like, leave your life of sin, go and sin no more kind of scenario. So there is a moment where and that's discipleship. They haven't made a visible decision to follow Christ, but yet Jesus said, look, you're going to have to leave your life of sin. You're going to have to make a move. You're going to have to change your posture, change your position. And his grace wasn't dependent on that in the beginning. So for the woman caught in adultery in John 8, for example, she needed, I think, emotional healing and social healing. Jesus brought that, and he said, I don't condemn you, therefore go and leave your life of sin. So I think that for us, what we've got to navigate as church is understanding, like, first and foremost, we're called to deal with the church. So we should be pulling down ideas that wrong Christians have. Now the hard thing is who gets to decide that, really. Well, ultimately, if you're in the church, hopefully you're sitting under the authority of leaders. That's why sitting under authority is a beautiful thing, not a restrictive thing, because now you absolve your responsibility to get these things right onto the shoulder of leaders, and that's why teachers and leaders are held at higher account before God. They have more to answer for because of the people under their care. But I think when it comes to mission in the world, primarily our job is not to correct the world, but we are called to influence the world. So we are in the world, but not of the world. And the way that you influence the world is to be different to the world. So I think many things, for example, I think people should, when we go on the school run, people should look at our kids and go, the kids are amazing. So polite and obedient and stuff. And see through our influence. It's not because we've come and said, oh, we think this about transgenderism or anything, but just by the evidence and the fruit of our lives that Jesus' teachings and Jesus' direct influence on us are so shaped the way we think and behave that we're getting different outcomes to you. Even with our finances, because of our beliefs and our obedience to the scriptures, to tithe and all this stuff, we see a blessing and a prosperity that is supernatural. And actually, so even with Israel, I'm jumping all over the place. With Israel, like Jesus says, like through you, I'm going to show the Gentiles what it looks like to be in relationship with me through you, through the way that you're blessed, through the way you live. So it's not about Israel necessarily going and preaching at the Gentiles, but actually the evidence of God working in their life and through their existence as they partner with him is actually, I think, the strongest, I guess, message. But at some point also, we should be saying it's because we believe differently. We have a different take on truth. We have a different take. So I think, I don't know. All of that to say, be a good Christian. Boom.
I think that's I think it's really, really interesting, because I feel like the propensity of Christians is to be so obsessively focused with trying to get the world to behave differently, as if we should be surprised. Like, where the world's at right now shouldn't surprise Christians.
No.
We should look and go, this makes complete sense. This is the ultimate byproduct of like generations upon generations upon generations of moving further away from God. And I agree. I think the challenge for Christians is to go, when we look at the church, can we be honest enough and go, these aspects of church is where some of this stuff has taken root. Can we talk about it? Can we deal with it? Like, so I was thinking about this because obviously I was watching this documentary. It's going, even on the issue of racism, the answer isn't to find a social construct to remove it. The answer is to bring people into fellowship with Jesus. I think it's impossible, in 1 John, I think it says, how can you say you love your brother how can you say you love God who you haven't seen if you can't love your brother whom you have seen? I think it's impossible to engage Jesus, but land up at a place where you would in any way embrace racism. So the church doesn't have to come up with a new social construct of how to exist together. What they have to do is go, how do we live out in our behavior the teaching of Jesus? I have to love you because it's the only way I know I love God. If I don't love you, I can't say I love you, God. Like, so I feel kind of like that, but we've ended up so much in the behaviors conversation with the world and ignored everything happening internally and hope that if we can then shift the world, it'll make the church better. And it's probably kind of where I'm at when I think about Fire Mountain. As I go, my reflections on Fire Mountain over 44 episodes is going, more and more I'm convinced we don't need to change the world to be more Christian. We need to change the church to be more Christian. The world, because then we'll do what we need to in the world. Rather than, well, if we can get the world to be really way more Christian, it's going to save the church, as if that's the salvation for the church, and it's not.
That's a great
but I was kind of like fascinated because obviously I know you talk about culture. I know that this Sunday We had Wayne Smith in the room,
that was
so
so
I don't really know. But if you watched online, Dom speaks a bit more about culture.
Yeah, that's true.
And so you should definitely check that out if you haven't. And I was just kind of fascinated because of this documentary. I was thinking, like, we're weighing in at the wrong place. Like the church should have been introspective during the 60s and 70s and gone, are we racist?
Well, the interesting thing as well is obviously you spoke to it really articulately, actually, but that the teachings of Jesus, or like, if you like, the scriptures, is like it speaks to both the oppressor and the victim.
Yeah.
So it trains people out of racism.
Yeah.
Right. But it also trains people who are subject to racism.
Yeah.
So it speaks to both the oppressor and the victim,
Wow.
in the sense also like, you know, so in the one hand, in the scriptures, it speaks to masters, how you're to deal with your slaves. And then it speaks to slaves, how are you to respond to your masters. So it's not just that it speaks to the perpetrator of the problem. It speaks to the recipient of the issue. So like, so you're right, actually. You know, these things should inform, because this is the best chance we've got to actually eradicate some of these things from, you know, and people have different thoughts as to how deep these things run. But I think ultimately what the scripture helps me understand knows that I'm more than a conqueror, and know that like all things work together and I can take on the world in Christ. Great. But it also speaks to me, how am I supposed to journey through suffering? How am I? So it's not just this dominionist ideal. It actually also speaks to the hardships and the difficulties, and how I ensure proximity to Christ and maintain a good attitude and outlook even in the hardest times. So that idea that like it speaks to every facet and component. But I think you're right, our job is not to consecrate the world, it's to consecrate the church. And actually through a consecrated church the influence on the world is greater. But we don't expect the world to behave like the church, because the world isn't the church. We are different entities. So it's a good thought, Richard. Well done.
No, that's great. That's great. Well, I mean, that's time, really.
Episode 44.
Episode 44. In the bag.
In the can.
It's what we do. It's what we do. This is how we roll. It's how we roll.
Mate, we've got 5 more episodes that we are committed to. We're going to change it up in New Year.
Yeah.
But we've got to think
crazy,
about,
man.
It's crazy, isn't it?
5 more episodes.
And I don't know. I can't know how many
I
times we talk about Boris
definitely know.
Johnson and
I definitely know we need to do a conversation around the Jewish nation.
I know you've said
fascinated, man. I
That
want
could
to
really
get
get
into
us in
it.
hot water.
It will get us in hot water. Well, I think it'll get one of us in hot water and make the other one really liked.
Well, episode 50.
Yeah, episode 50. Let's go.
The definite last one that we're committed
Should we
to.
call episode 50 the cancel episode and just do everything that could get us cancelled? Pick all the topics that could get us cancelled and go,
you
let's do
cancelled,
them.
Yeah, we could, to be fair. We could just go... actually,
Yeah.
that's a good point. I won't go into that. We'll get into that another time. Yeah.
Amazing. Great. Well, thank you for joining us this episode of Fire Mountain. As always, we'd love to hear your thoughts and comments. Email firemountain@sunnyhill.church. None of you have emailed, so thanks a lot for that. But it's still there. I still check. Do it. Email it.
There's only guaranteed 5 episodes left.
Yeah.
Then we're going to reshaping and repurposing this broadcast. But we've got 5 more episodes like this, so make sure you tune in.
5 more episodes, and remember, we're still looking for a sponsor.
Still no sponsor.
Great. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.